3 years. That's how long my wife looked me in the eyes and lied. She said she was working late. She said she was with friends. She said she loved me. But behind every excuse was the same man, my so-called friend. When I finally found out, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I shook his hand and told them both they had nothing to worry about. And for the next few months, I became their best ally, smiling, listening, pretending to believe them, while quietly building a plan that would take everything from them. This isn't just about cheating. This is about destroying to people who thought they could play me for a fool and making sure they never recover. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to sit here, speaking into a microphone, telling strangers about how my life fell apart. I thought I had it all figured out. A stable job, a decent house, and a wife I believed was my partner in everything. Her name was Claire. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 years of what I thought was trust, laughter, and quiet comfort. Looking back now, I can't pinpoint the exact moment things began to shift, but I remember the feeling, like a tiny crack in a perfectly clean window. Small enough to ignore at first, but growing with each passing day. It started about 6 months ago. Claire became distracted. She had always been glued to her phone like most people these days, but now it was different. She'd tilt the screen away from me when she typed, her laughter came in short, breathy bursts, and she'd leave the room to answer calls. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was stressed from work, maybe she'd picked up a new hobby, maybe I didn't want to admit the last maybe to myself. Then there were the late nights. She used to be home by 6:30 sharp, but lately, she'd stroll in hours later, muttering something about overtime or drinks with the girls. I tried to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. One Friday evening, she came home past midnight. I was still awake, sitting in the living room with the TV muted. She walked in, cheeks flushed, smelling of expensive cologne, and it wasn't mine. Long night? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She froze for just a fraction of a second before forcing a smile. Yeah. Work was crazy. We went out to celebrate finishing a big project. I nodded, but something in my gut twisted. That was the first night I realized I needed answers. Not assumptions, not excuses. Proof. The following week, I started paying closer attention. Her phone never left her hand, even in the bathroom. She changed her lock screen password, something she'd never done before. And she began dressing differently. More makeup, new dresses, heels she hadn't worn in years. One evening, I caught a glimpse of her phone lighting up on the counter while she was in the shower. A name flashed on the screen, Ethan. I didn't know an Ethan. She had never mentioned one. The preview of the message read, "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you." My hands trembled, but I didn't open it. Not yet. I needed to be smart, careful. If I confronted her too soon, she'd just deny it. That night, lying beside her in bed, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how long this had been going on and who exactly Ethan was. I didn't know it yet, but this was the first step down a path that would change me forever. After that message from Ethan, I couldn't think straight. Every smile from Claire felt rehearsed. Every kiss on the cheek felt empty. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. If she was lying to me, I needed her own lies to trap her. So, I started paying attention to details I'd never noticed before. Her work schedule, the times she claimed to be out with friends, the small inconsistencies in her stories. The first clue came on a Tuesday. She said she was going to stay late at the office to help a coworker prepare for a presentation. I decided to test it. An hour after she should been at work, I called her office line. A young receptionist answered and told me Claire had left a while ago. I didn't say anything. I just hung up and felt my heart sink. That night, she came home in a black dress I'd never seen before, hair perfectly styled, smelling faintly of that same cologne. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I smiled back. Inside, I was making plans. The next day, I installed a small tracking app on her phone. I know it's not legal. I know it's not moral. But I also knew my marriage was hanging by a thread, and the truth mattered more to me than the law in that moment. 2 nights later, she told me she was having a girls' night at her friend Jenna's place. I watched her leave, wearing another new dress, high heels clicking against the driveway. 10 minutes later, I checked the tracker. She wasn't heading to Jenna's. She was driving toward a hotel across town. I didn't follow her. Not then. I needed to know if this was a pattern, not just a one-time thing. Over the next week, I watched her visits to that hotel become regular, every few days, always at night, always for a few hours. The tracker never lied. One Friday evening, I decided to go see it for myself. I parked across the street, keeping my headlights off. I saw her car pull in, and a few minutes later, a tall man in a gray jacket walked out of the lobby to greet her. They hugged. Not a friendly hug. It was the kind of embrace you give someone you've been missing in ways I couldn't bear to think about. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I caught a glimpse as they turned toward the entrance, and my blood ran cold. I knew him. Ethan wasn't some stranger. He was someone I'd had beers with, someone I'd trusted. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. The pieces of my life were falling apart right in front of me, and for the first time I started to think about revenge. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Claire, staring at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing, wondering how many times she'd come home from him and slipped under these sheets like nothing happened. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work. I needed the day to think and to dig deeper. I started with social media. Ethan's profiles were mostly private, but I found enough to piece together a timeline. Tagged photos from bars, restaurants, even concerts that Claire had missed because she claimed she was working late. I cross-referenced the dates. More than half matched the nights she'd been busy. Then I remembered something: a storage box in our closet where Claire kept old keepsakes. I'd never gone through it before, but now I did. Buried under photo albums and birthday cards, I found a small envelope. Inside were printed hotel receipts, dated as far back as 2 years ago. Same hotel, same room number. 2 years. 2 years of my life spent believing I was building a future with a faithful wife, while she was building a secret life with a man I once called a friend. The anger in me boiled over into something sharper. Not just rage, but clarity. I realized that if I confronted them now, they'd just lie, twist the story, maybe even turn it back on me. No, that wouldn't be enough. If they'd been careful enough to hide it for 2 years, then I needed to be more careful to destroy them in a way they'd never see coming. I spent the next week gathering more proof. I followed them once, staying far enough behind so they wouldn't notice. I watched them check into that same hotel, laughing like teenagers. I took photos. I recorded video from my phone. Then, I started watching Ethan more closely. I learned his patterns, where he worked, who he met for lunch, which bar he stopped at every Thursday. I knew when he was alone, when he wasn't. The more I learned, the more the plan began to take shape in my mind. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be messy. But it would leave a mark on both of them, one they couldn't erase. And as I sat in my car one night, watching Claire's silhouette in the window of that hotel room, I whispered to myself, "You have no idea what's coming." By the time the 4th week rolled around, I had enough evidence to destroy both Claire and Ethan in ways they could never recover from. I had photos of them at the hotel, videos of them holding hands, laughing, touching in ways that no just friends ever would. I had timestamps, receipts, dates, even little details like the way she tilted her head when he whispered in her ear. But I wasn't ready to go public. Not yet. If I dropped the truth now, it would be a loud explosion, sure. But explosions are quick. Over in seconds. I didn't want quick. I wanted slow. I wanted every single day to feel like a rope tightening around their throats, so they never saw the end coming until it was too late. The shift in me, I could feel myself changing. I was no longer the man who laughed easily, who trusted easily. I had become cold, patient. Every smile I gave Claire at breakfast felt like a mask I was wearing. Every "I love you" that left my mouth was a rehearsed line in the longest play of my life. And the strangest thing, I didn't feel guilty. Not about spying. Not about lying back to her. Not about the plans I was making. If anything, I felt more in control than I ever had. This wasn't about saving the marriage anymore. It was about balance. She had taken something from me, years of trust, love, time. I was going to take something from her, and from Ethan too. Step 1. Cutting them off from the world. The first thing I needed was isolation. Not physical, but social. If they had no one to lean on, their panic would grow faster. I started with Ethan. I knew from my weeks of watching him that he worked at a financial advisory firm downtown. Image and trust were everything in his line of work. One slip, and it was over. I didn't just send his boss the photos of him and Claire. That would be too direct, too easy to trace. No, I went deeper. I created a fake client profile, complete with a LinkedIn history, fabricated addresses, and a trail of fake financial interests. Then, I requested Ethan's services through the company's official portal. When his boss reached out to confirm the request, I replied with a concern that he'd heard rumors about Ethan's involvement with a married client and that I didn't feel comfortable doing business with him. Attached was a single blurred image, just enough to suggest intimacy, but not enough to scream affair. 2 days later, Ethan was suspended pending internal investigation. Step 2. Claire's career. Claire worked in a marketing agency that relied heavily on client trust and public image. She had always been the friendly, professional one at work, the one everyone went to for ideas. I decided to change that. I sent her boss an anonymous email from a new account. I didn't accuse her of cheating. That would be too obvious. Instead, I implied she had been seen meeting with a man from a competing firm multiple times at a hotel and that she might be discussing confidential projects. The photo I attached was cropped, just Claire, smiling in that way she reserved for Ethan. No context, no proof. But suspicion doesn't need proof to do damage. The subtle attacks, but work was only part of it. The real poison would come from their personal lives. I copied Claire's contact list one night when she was asleep. Friends, family, colleagues, all of them. Then, using a fake social media account, I started following her friends. I didn't post anything direct. Instead, I commented on old photos of Claire and Ethan together at group events from years ago. Little things like, "Good times with you too," or "You both looked so close back then." Harmless on the surface. But people notice. People talk. Soon, her phone would light up at night with messages she didn't want me to see. She'd glance at me nervously before typing back short, defensive replies. The watching game. I kept watching them. Not just at the hotel. Sometimes I'd park down the street from Ethan's apartment and see Claire's car there. Lights dimmed inside. I'd sit there for hours. Engine off. Drinking cheap coffee from a gas station cup, thinking about all the years I'd been faithful to her while she was doing this. I learned their patterns. Ethan liked to stop by the same bar every Thursday. Claire would run errands on Saturdays around noon. I knew their rhythm better than they did. Step 3. Turn them against each other. Affairs thrive on secrecy and trust between the cheaters. All I had to do was break that trust. From a burner phone, I sent Ethan a message pretending to be Claire. "We need to slow things down. He's starting to suspect." An hour later, I sent Claire a message pretending to be Ethan. If you're going to back out, at least tell me to my face. I thought I meant more to you. I imagined the way they'd read those texts, each wondering if the other was losing interest. It was a small crack, but like all cracks, it would spread. The first signs of panic by the end of the week. Things were shifting. Claire came home earlier than usual. She avoided long phone calls in the kitchen, choosing instead to talk in whispers in the bedroom. She jumped when the doorbell rang. Ethan. He stopped showing up at the hotel for almost 2 weeks. But I wasn't done. I started sending Ethan screenshots of fake dating profiles with Claire's photo on them, implying she was meeting other men. And to Claire, I sent grainy photos of Ethan having drinks with another woman at the Thursday bar, a setup I orchestrated by paying a woman to meet him there and act overly friendly. Trust between them collapsed like wet paper. I sat at the kitchen table one night, sipping coffee while Claire washed dishes in silence. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. But I knew she was wondering if I knew. I wanted her to keep wondering, because the final act was coming. And when it hit, neither she nor Ethan would ever see it coming or recover from it. The morning of my final move didn't feel like any other day. I woke up before sunrise, the sky still heavy with darkness. Claire was lying beside me, breathing evenly, her hair spread over the pillow like something from an old photograph. If a stranger had walked in, they would have thought we were just a loving couple in a quiet home. But I knew the truth, and the truth was poison. I lay there, watching her, and realized something that startled me. I didn't feel hatred anymore. Not even anger. Just nothing. She was no longer my wife in my mind, just a piece of a chessboard I was about to sweep clean. I slipped out of bed and went to my study. On the desk, my laptop was already open, the screen glowing softly. In the corner of the room sat the box, a plain black folder filled with every piece of evidence it collected over the past months. Photos, videos, screenshots, hotel receipts, even audio clips of her laughing with Ethan late at night. It wasn't just proof, it was a weapon. The calm before the storm, I brewed coffee, sat in the stillness, and went through my plan one last time. I had been building toward this for weeks, every careful step, every tiny seed of doubt I had planted in their lives was about to bear fruit. It had to be perfect, not messy, not rushed. Perfect. I told myself, they didn't deserve a quick ending. They deserved a slow fall. The public reveal step by step first. I compiled everything into a single, devastating package. The videos weren't just raw clips. I edited them to tell a story. A beginning, middle, and end. The smiling faces in the hotel lobby. The casual touches in public. The blurred yet unmistakable images of them entering the same hotel room. Each moment had a timestamp in bold red letters. I added captions. Not insults, not rage, just cold facts. Dates, times, locations. The kind of details that made denial impossible. Then I built the website. It was simple, clean, and impossible to ignore. The homepage had a photo of Claire and Ethan from an old barbecue, both smiling at the camera. Above it, in stark black letters, "When loyalty is just a word, the story of Claire and Ethan." Clicking enter took you to the timeline, a month-by-month account of the affair, supported by the evidence it gathered. Hotel invoices, scanned in high resolution. A log of text messages. GPS pings from her phone. The site was password protected at first. I wasn't ready to unleash it to the world just yet. Lighting the match at exactly 9 a.m., I started sending the link out. Not to strangers, to the people who mattered most to them. Claire's parents, her sister, her closest friends, Ethan's boss, his co-workers, his small circle of brothers. Each email was the same, short message: "You deserve to know the truth about Claire and Ethan." Password 0719. Within minutes, I could see from the site analytics The first views were rolling in. Dozens. Then hundreds. By 9:30, my phone started buzzing. I didn't answer. The fallout at work. Claire's office called her in before noon. I know because I was there, not inside, but across the street in my car, watching from behind tinted windows. She walked in with her head held high. She walked out an hour later, pale as a sheet, clutching a thin envelope. She stood on the sidewalk for a few seconds, staring at her phone, then typed something quickly. My phone lit up seconds later. "Claire, we need to talk. Something's wrong." I didn't reply. At almost the same time, Ethan was escorted out of his building by security. His firm was small, reputation-driven. A scandal like this wasn't just bad, it was a death sentence for his career. The confrontation that evening, I called Claire's parents. "I need you to come over. It's important." When they arrived, I didn't say a word. I just pressed play on the TV, the full compilation, in perfect clarity, filling the living room with every ugly truth. Claire's mother covered her mouth, tears spilling over. Her father's face hardened. Halfway through, he stood up and walked outside, unable to watch anymore. Claire sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. Why are you doing this to me?" she whispered. I looked her straight in the eye. "Because you already did it to me. For years." The last twist of the knife. The next morning, I filed for divorce. But I wasn't walking away empty-handed. For months, I had been quietly moving money from our joint savings into an account only I could access. Every investment I told her about was just a careful transfer. By the time I was done, she had barely 2 months' worth of living expenses left. Ethan wasn't in better shape. His apartment lease was through his company. Without a job, he had 30 days to leave, and the only place he could go. Claire's a woman who now blamed him for everything she'd lost. Watching them rot from afar over the next weeks, I didn't speak to either of them. But word traveled. Mutual friends told me about the screaming matches, about how Claire accused Ethan of ruining her life, while he accused her of being reckless and stupid. They lasted less than 2 months before splitting up. Claire moved back in with her parents, working part-time at a cafe, far from the high-profile career she'd once had. Ethan left the city, his name tainted in every professional circle that mattered. And me. I didn't just get revenge. I got silence, peace, and the knowledge that sometimes the worst punishment isn't loud or violent. It's slow, methodical, and leaves scars no one else can see. Question to the viewers: if you discovered your spouse had been cheating for years, would you simply walk away, or would you make sure they lost everything they ever cared about?